Many people believe that beauty pageants are nothing more than competitions of appearance. However, others argue that they serve as a gateway to the upper echelons of society. For some young women, these contests have tar. The central figure in today's case is one such girl. At just 17 years old, she had already earned the title of runner-up in a national pageant, confidently walking the stage under the gaze of tens of thousands of admiring eyes. Shortly thereafter, she found herself in the kind of romantic relationship she had always dreamed of. Her lover, 21 years her senior, was a successful businessman who pampered her endlessly. Spend. In the beginning, the relationship was nothing short of a fairy tale. But what she didn't realize was this. When money and love become intertwined, things often get... This is not a work of fiction. It's not a movie plot. This is the chilling reality of a true murder case. Join us as we uncover the truth, a modern-day Cinderella story that began. The crime took place in Gia Lam District, on the outskirts of Hanoi, Vietnam. The area lies alongside one of the most famous rivers in the country, the Red River. This river holds major significance in Southeast Asia. Originating from Yunnan, China, it flows all the way down into northern Vietnam. Stretching over 1,100 kilometers, the Red River is often considered the mother river of the northern region. Near Hanoi, it is a vital artery for local residents. Every day, countless fishermen travel its waters, catching fish and transporting goods. It's an indispensable part of daily life here. No one could have imagined that this life-giving river would one day become the setting for a gruesome murder. On October 13, 2023, around 12:30 p.m., the weather was uncommonly pleasant, clear skies and refreshing air. A middle-aged couple, longtime residents of Gia Lam, set out as they usually did, rowing their old bamboo boat onto the Red River for a routine fishing trip. As seasoned fishermen, they knew these waters like the back of their hands. After a while, they prepared to pull their nets ashore. But just as they neared the riverbank, they noticed something strange floating about 30 meters from shore. Not too close, but close enough to spot. At first, they assumed it was an artificial leg, like a mannequin limb, and thought nothing of it. They had come across such oddities before. But as their boat drew nearer, they realized they were terribly mistaken. It wasn't a mannequin part, it was a real human limb. Surprisingly, the couple didn't panic. Having worked on the Red River for years, they had witnessed plenty of drowning victims, some from accidents, others from suicides. Often, the bodies had been in the water so long that fish had gnawed away parts of them. Scenes like this had sadly become familiar, so even now they remained calm. But within just minutes, another nearby fisherman spotted something else, a human head. This time, even these seasoned fishers could no longer stay composed. It quickly became clear, this wasn't just a drowning. Someone had been dismembered and dumped into the Red River. They immediately called the police. The issue, however, was that local law enforcement had grown somewhat desensitized to such calls. In this area, reports of floating bodies in the river were not uncommon. Most turned out to be accidents. As a result, the police were even more composed than the fishermen, and didn't rush to the scene right away. Around 3:30 that afternoon, the same fishing couple returned to the banks of the Red River, where they had discovered the human leg earlier that morning. They planned to resume their fishing routine, but as they neared the riverbank, they were met with another disturbing scene. In a nearby grassy area, a massive swarm of flies buzzed wildly in disarray, far more than usual, as if drawn by the overpowering scent of decay. Curious, the couple stepped closer to investigate. At first glance, nothing seemed unusual, but the air was thick with a pungent stench, like the rotting of dead fish, rising from the ground itself. Sensing something was off, they nudged the ground with their feet. Beneath the dirt, they uncovered a freshly poured slab of cement. But who would pour concrete right at the river's edge? It made no sense. Kneeling down, they began clearing away the mud, gravel, and loose stones. Before long, a deep red blanket came into view. On its surface was a large, dried, crusted stain. It looked unmistakably like blood. Coupled with the human limb they had seen floating in the river that morning, a horrifying realization began to take shape. Their hearts sank. This was no ordinary accident. Something serious had happened here. They immediately contacted the police for the second time to report this new and alarming discovery. This time, authorities finally grasped the gravity of the situation. Hanoi police dispatched investigators and forensic experts to the scene without delay. The investigative team meticulously excavated the cemented area. Beneath the hardened layer, they found a blood-soaked old blanket. It had been tightly bound with coarse rope in a series of dead knots. Forensic specialists on site cut through the bindings and unfolded the blanket, revealing a bundle of dismembered human body parts inside. The area was swiftly sealed off by law enforcement, and the search perimeter was expanded. Officers began combing the riverbank for more remains. It didn't take long before additional human tissue was discovered nearby. A preliminary forensic examination confirmed the victim was a young woman, approximately 20 years old. Her body was naked, partially decomposed, and showed clear signs of trauma. The cause of death was determined to be massive blood loss, with 2 fatal stab wounds, one puncturing the right lung and the other driven directly into the heart. Experts concluded that the victim had been attacked suddenly and without warning. She likely had no time to defend herself. Even more troubling was the clear intent behind the crime. The killer had left no personal belongings or identifying items near the body. The remains had been methodically dismembered and scattered, suggesting a deliberate effort to delay police investigation and obscure the victim's identity. This was no ordinary homicide. It was a calculated crime, brutal in execution, cold in design, and merciless in its method. But who was the victim? What had she experienced in her final moments? And what was the killer's motive? Hanoi police immediately launched a nationwide review of recent missing persons cases and broadcasted the case on national television, urging the public to come forward with any relevant information. No one expected the case to break so quickly. But within just 24 hours, there was a major breakthrough. The victim was identified. Her name was Ho Yen Ni. She was just 17 years old, born in 2006 in Ba Jin District, Hanoi. She was a student at the Hanoi Academy of Theater and Cinema and worked part-time as a model. Even more tragic, she had recently won the title of runner-up in the 2022 Miss Ao Dai Vietnam pageant, a competition designed to highlight the beauty and cultural elegance of traditional Vietnamese dress. For some girls from modest backgrounds, contests like this are more than just beauty pageants. They're a golden ticket, a pathway to dreams, recognition, and independence. For many, they symbolize a leap of fate into a different life. From publicly available photos online, Nai appeared sweet and graceful, with a striking figure and a pair of eyes that carried a pure, radiant light. Her dream was crystal clear. She wanted to enter the entertainment industry and become a nationally famous star. After the beauty pageant brought her recognition, she began receiving brand endorsement deals, magazine cover shoots, and even walked in several fashion shows. On social media, she was active and frequently shared snapshots of her daily life, charity work, and volunteer activities. She had a loyal fan base, and her image was consistently positive and uplifting. Yet curiously, she never shared anything about her personal relationships online. This detail caught the attention of investigators. To understand her possible motives for being targeted and to narrow down the suspect pool, police needed to delve deeper into her private life. They started by speaking to her parents, focusing on her most recent routines and lifestyle. Nai's parents said that about 6 months earlier, she had moved out to live on her own, saying it would help her better balance school and work. Although they were concerned, they also felt it was a sign of her maturity and independence, something to be encouraged. Then came October 11th. Nai suddenly went completely off the radar. Her parents immediately contacted her friends, classmates, and even the university, but no one knew where she had gone. On October 14th, the police discovered her remains in the Red River and notified the family to come to the station for identification. At first, Nai's mother refused to believe her daughter could have met such a fate. But when she saw the familiar lotus tattoo on the victim's right ankle, combined with DNA test results, She had no choice but to accept the devastating truth. Her daughter was gone. Throughout the police investigation, Ni's parents continuously emphasized that their daughter was a kind, diligent young woman, never one to make enemies. Whether in school or work, she always gave her best. They couldn't fathom how someone like her could have ended up crossing the wrong person, or why she would suffer such a cruel fate. But as the police dug deeper, a darker world began to emerge beneath the glamorous surface of her life. 2 days after the discovery, the investigation shifted into high gear. Following a lead provided by someone with insider knowledge, police tracked down the last known location where Ho Yen Ni had been seen, a residential apartment complex in Hanoi. Officers collected the building's surveillance footage and made a critical discovery. On the night she disappeared, Ni had returned to the complex with a middle-aged man. After that, she was never seen leaving the building. Who was this man? What was his connection to Ni? Was he her boyfriend? The issue was, Ni was only 17, still in college, and according to her parents, she wasn't in a romantic relationship, nor had she ever mentioned knowing any middle-aged men. To determine the man's identity, investigators interviewed the apartment building's management staff. The security guard recognized him immediately. He said the man was the owner of the entire building and that his family lived there too. He also shared a shocking detail, that Ni and this man seemed to have a secret relationship. In other words, this man was very likely her clandestine lover. Police followed up and soon confirmed the man's identity, Ta Dui Khan. He was 38 years old and originally from Tai Binh province. What made the case even more perplexing was how unlikely Khan seemed as a suspect. To the outside world, he was tall, handsome, well-dressed, the kind of man who naturally commanded attention. In business circles, he thrived. He owned multiple entertainment venues, spent freely, and was known as a smooth talker with connections across all social classes. He was also married. His wife was beautiful, gentle, and came from an influential family. Together, they had 3 children and were seen as a picture-perfect household. To outsiders, Khan lacked nothing: looks, wealth, status, a family. He had it all. So why would a man like him be entangled with a 17-year-old girl? At this point, the case was already tangled enough. But what truly shocked investigators was learning that Khan was a friend of Ni's father. Suddenly, everything became even harder to comprehend. There was a 21-year age gap between them. One was the daughter of a close friend. The other, a married man in his late 30s. By all appearances, their relationship should have been one of mentor and mentee, someone she would respectfully address as uncle. What happened between Ho Yen Ni and the man on the night she disappeared? The question wasn't just hard for her parents to process. Even the investigators were taken aback. Police concluded that their relationship was either inappropriate or concealing something far more serious. They decided to confront Ta Dui Khan directly. But when officers arrived at his residence, he was nowhere to be found. He had vanished. His phone was unreachable, and his family claimed they had no idea how to contact him. As investigators dug deeper, they discovered that the timing of Khan's disappearance coincided almost exactly with the time of Ni's murder. The overlap was too precise to ignore. Authorities now strongly suspected he was on the run and issued an emergency nationwide arrest warrant. On the evening of October 14th, police received a critical tip. A source claimed Khan had fled Hanoi and was hiding in an old, long-abandoned house in his hometown in Tai Binh province. Acting immediately, Hanoi police coordinated with local law enforcement and surrounded the dilapidated house at 11 p.m. that night, preparing for a possible standoff and arrest. Their top priority was to capture Khan alive, both to determine his motive and to find out whether he had any accomplices. What they didn't expect was his refusal to cooperate. Khan barricaded himself inside and flat out refused to open the door. Facing his strong resistance, police ultimately decided to force their way in. The house was eerily quiet, dimly lit. Officers split into teams to search each room. Eventually, one of them noticed something strange under the bed. When they lifted the wooden slats, they found Khan curled up beneath, holding a small knife and repeatedly stabbing himself in the chest and abdomen. Blood had soaked the floor. It was a gruesome sight, a man desperately trying to end his life and escape justice. Fortunately, the officers acted quickly. They pulled him out from under the bed, disarmed him, and rushed him to the hospital for emergency surgery. After an overnight operation, Khan survived. While recovering, he was placed under tight police surveillance and had no further chance to flee. Later, police conducted their first official interrogation. After several rounds of questioning, Khan voluntarily confessed he was the one who killed Nye. He claimed the two had entered into a romantic relationship in early 2023 and had been secretly dating for about 6 months. As for the motive, he said Nye had borrowed 50 million Vietnamese dong, about $2,000 from him, and hadn't paid it back. An argument ensued, and in a fit of rage, he lost control and killed her. To cover it up, he dismembered her body and scattered the remains in the Red River. But something about his story didn't sit right. Could a man really murder a 17-year-old girl and mutilate her body? Over $2,000? Police were deeply skeptical. His account didn't make sense. There were no witnesses and Nye was gone. There was no way to verify what really happened. As the case became public, theories spread quickly. Some speculated that Khan and Nye were never actually in a relationship, that Khan had developed an obsession with her, and when she rejected his advances, he lashed out in deadly violence. Another, more widely accepted theory suggested that Nye had tried to end the relationship, but Khan couldn't handle the breakup. Driven by a possessive, "if I can't have you, no one can" mentality, he committed the horrific act. Even more disturbing was the growing suspicion that this wasn't just a crime of passion. Khan was a man with a family, a career, and broad social ties. How could he have manipulated the life of a young girl so completely in just a few months? What else was he hiding? Were there others involved? Though the case had reached its initial conclusion, the full truth appeared to be far from fully uncovered. According to later testimony from Ta Dui Khan, the actual time of Ho Yen Nhi's death was the night of October 10th, 3 days before the fishermen alerted police. That night, Khan's wife and children were not home. Taking advantage of the situation, he invited Nhi out for dinner. The two went to an upscale restaurant in Hanoi. At first, the atmosphere was relatively pleasant. After their meal, Khan brought Nhi back to his house. They had sexual intercourse. But everything changed when the conversation shifted to the matter of money. Khan once again brought up the 50 million Vietnamese dong loan. Nhi responded bluntly, "I don't have money. I'm not paying you back." Her words triggered something in Khan. Whatever intimacy had existed between them immediately evaporated, replaced by a fierce argument. As tensions escalated, Khan suddenly grabbed a long fruit knife from the kitchen and plunged it into Nhi's chest. The attack was swift and forceful, so much so that Nhi had no time to react. She collapsed to the floor and died on the spot. Whether the murder was spontaneous or premeditated, Khan insisted it was a crime of passion. But what he did next clearly went far beyond an emotional outburst. He returned to the kitchen to get a sharper knife, then dragged Nhi's lifeless body into the bathroom and began a brutal cleanup. He methodically dismembered her, severing the head, limbs, and torso, placing the parts into a large white foam box and sealing it with duct tape. After completing the task, he meticulously cleaned the entire crime scene, removing all traces and restoring the room to its original state. Around dawn, he called a taxi company and booked a ride. When the driver arrived at his neighborhood, Khan asked him to come upstairs and help carry a large container. This moment was later captured on surveillance camera footage retrieved by investigators. Unaware of what he was transporting, the driver helped carry the foam box downstairs and loaded it into the car's trunk. Khan then asked to be driven to a remote, isolated road near the Red River. That area was still a distance from the water's edge and separated by a set of steps. Once again, Khan asked the driver to help him carry the box down the steps. After the driver left, Khan proceeded with the disposal. He first threw Nhi's head, legs, and scattered body tissues into the river. Then, He buried her torso in the muddy riverbank soil, the very spot where, days later, fishermen noticed the swarm of flies and the slab of cement covering the ground. After disposing of the body, he called the same taxi to return home. But he wasn't done yet. Determined to destroy all remaining evidence, he continued to cover his tracks. He took Nai's personal belongings, including her 2 mobile phones, and rode a motorbike to Thung Long Bridge in Hanoi. There, he tossed the phones off the bridge to ensure the data would be permanently destroyed, even if they were recovered. He then hid her handbag and sandals inside a short-term rental apartment in Bat Trang village, hoping to scatter all crucial pieces of evidence across different times and locations. His goal was to prevent police from piecing together the crime quickly. The entire process was methodical, calculated, and disturbingly devoid of emotion. It was as if he had rehearsed the plan for a long time, eliminating risks layer by layer, erasing evidence step by step. But he overlooked one thing. No matter how carefully one tries to cover their tracks, fate has its own plans. The body fragments floating down the Red River became the first clue in unraveling the entire murder. According to a revised sequence of events pieced together by police, on October 12th, the 3rd day after Ni's murder, Khan began to feel anxious. Although he had buried the body near the riverbank 2 days earlier, he couldn't shake a growing sense of insecurity. He feared the shallow grave might not hold. What if it rained heavily, or the river rose? The possibility that the body could surface gnawed at him like a thorn in his chest. So he made a decision to return to the scene and reinforce the disposal. His plan was to take advantage of the quiet of night and seal the burial site with cement to prevent any discovery. That afternoon, he returned to the riverbank but found the area unusually busy with people passing by. There was no opportunity to act unnoticed. He quietly retreated and decided to return later under cover of darkness. It wasn't until the early hours of October 13th that Khan finally crept back to the site. Crouching in the tall grass, he dug into the soil, exposing the shallow grave. Then, carefully and deliberately, he poured cement over the area, sealing it completely. As he worked, he felt a twisted sense of satisfaction, believing that now, everything was perfect. No one would ever find what lay beneath. But less than 10 hours later, the very site he believed to be his best-kept secret was discovered by fishermen. That same day, Hanoi media reported initial details of the murder investigation. That evening, Khan sat frozen in front of the television in his rural hometown, watching the news broadcast. He knew then, the truth had surfaced, and it was only a matter of time before his crimes would be fully exposed. Without wasting another moment, he packed a small bag and boarded a night bus out of Hanoi, fleeing to an old abandoned house in Tai Bin province where he once lived. Khan believed the remote property could shield him for a few days while he figured out his next move. But less than 12 hours later, police, acting on a tip, tracked him down and surrounded the house. He was arrested shortly after. From buying cement and disposing of the body under the cover of night to frantically fleeing and attempting suicide in a decaying house, Ta Dui Khan had orchestrated every detail of his crime with precision. But he couldn't outrun fate. He thought he had buried the truth deep enough. Yet no matter how skillfully evil is hidden, the truth always rises. On October 16th, 6 days after the murder, Hanoi police held a press conference to inform the public of the case's latest developments. According to Vietnamese criminal law, the penalty for murder ranges from 12 to 20 years in prison. In cases of extreme brutality, however, the sentence can escalate to life imprisonment or even the death penalty. And this case didn't involve only murder. It included desecration and dismemberment of a corpse, actions that shocked the nation and made the case a major focus of public concern. A renowned criminal attorney in Hanoi publicly commented that this was one of the most heinous murders in recent memory. The sheer cruelty and cold-blooded nature of the act, along with its social impact, met the legal standard for capital punishment. The lawyer further stated that Khan could face 2 separate charges, intentional murder and defilement of a corpse, and that the possibility of a death sentence was highly likely. After a prolonged trial process, On the morning of September 30th, 2024, the Hanoi People's Court delivered its first instance verdict. The defendant, now 39 years old, was sentenced to death for intentional murder. He received an additional 5-year sentence for the crime of theft. The total sentence, capital punishment. In civil proceedings, the court also ordered Khan to pay 334 million Vietnamese dong, about 15,000 US dollars, in financial compensation to Nhi's family. With that, this harrowing case reached its legal conclusion. Justice was served for the innocent life lost, and society was reminded once again, no act of violence, no matter how carefully concealed, can ultimately escape the reach of the law. To this day, the murder of Ho Yen Nhi continues to haunt the public in Vietnam. What remains most unsettling is the nature of the relationship between the victim and the perpetrator. Khan claimed they were lovers and said the murder stemmed from a financial dispute, but whether that's the truth, only he truly knows. According to information we've gathered from publicly available online sources, although no media outlet has yet disclosed the exact time or circumstances under which Nhi and Khan first met, police investigations and surveillance footage confirm that the two had, in fact, been involved in a secret relationship for quite some time prior to the murder. Both the apartment building's security guard and law enforcement officers verified that on the night of the incident, Khan and Nhi returned to the building together. Their body language appeared casual and familiar, but Nhi was never seen leaving again, further confirming that their relationship was far from ordinary. What's especially noteworthy is that we also found a past interview Nhi had participated in where she seemed to share some of her views on love and relationships. She said, "Not every beauty queen enters pageants to change her fate. When a man gives gifts in love, it's his way of proving his affection." Her words sounded candid and sincere, revealing a desire not to be stereotyped and a hope to be treated with respect and equality. But on another level, it also hinted at a form of acceptance, even justification, of the link between love and material things. Perhaps in her eyes, money and gifts were a natural part of love. That 50 million Vietnamese dong, roughly $2,000, may have represented a token of affection to her, while to the man, it may have been just part of a transactional relationship. At such a young age, lacking life experience, facing a much older and more successful man with greater financial power, any unequal relationship poses significant risk. Especially when love becomes entangled with money and influence, a girl might not recognize the danger concealed behind what looks like tender care, manipulation, control, even something lethal. The tragedy of Ho Yen Nhi is not just a personal catastrophe. It's a wake-up call to young women everywhere. In love, we all long to be cherished, but it's far more important to remain clear-headed and draw firm boundaries. We must learn to distinguish between true love and control, between romance and calculation. Blindly trusting a relationship just because the other person seems experienced or willing to give can sometimes cost you everything, even your life. What do you think? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And until next time, goodbye and stay safe.